Hey world, welcome back to another episode of Be Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. All right, so what if the biggest threat to your business isn't your competition? What if it's the next person you let into it? Every entrepreneur faces a critical decision. Should I take the deal? Should I bring on the partner? Should I accept the investment? The right choice can accelerate your uh, success, or it could bring it down. So today I have Scherrie Prince on the line. She's an attorney who advises entrepreneurs and business owners on ownership, governance, succession, and exit planning. She works at the intersection of business strategy and estate design, helping founders align how they operate today with what happens at transition, dispute, and disability or sale. And if you want to check her out as well, she also has her own podcast, Play Big Faster podcast. So definitely go check her out if you're watching today. So, Sheree, I just want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining us. Awesome. I am too. So let's start off hard, right? Tell me about a deal or partnership or opportunity that looked perfect on paper, but turned out to be something completely different in reality.
So something that that looked perfect on paper. Um, it could be a deal where both partners seem like they both had something to bring to the table, but actually there was no foundation to it in terms of a partnership agreement. A lot of times we think that we need a partner, and really all we need is an investor or an employee. So, say for instance, you're starting a business and you're undercapitalized. You may be thinking that for the short term answer, you need a partner, but that's a long term solution because it's so easy to get into a partnership, but not to get out of one. So that's one example. Also, you may feel like you don't have enough to pay for an employee over time. And so you bring on a partner to do the work, but you guys aren't aligned. And so that's another example where on paper it may look great, but that what you're looking for is a short term answer, but you're applying a long term solution.
Ah, nice. Thank you. Because, we have our friends, we have family members, and we like to trust the people that's right around us, and we don't do our due diligence or we trust them. So it's good that you say you have to just look and search, make sure everything, all the contracts, everything is good. So I like that. Thank you.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm not going to say run from partnerships with friends and family, but definitely get those friends and family who have the skill sets to do the things that you need to have done. Because it's important to have people that are loyal to you, people that you can trust, but you also need competent people to help you grow your business.
Yeah. Not the first person that knows, "Hey, I hey, let me help you out here." And on the back, they're just trying to get in on the profit, but not have the best interest on mind.
Yeah, and sometimes family is the closest thing to us, so we think, "Hey, my brother, because he's my brother, I'm gonna put him in charge of something." But that's like the fox guarding the hen house. So you just have to make those decisions along the way.
A good example is I, was calling a company recently, and it's a family-owned company, and the husband was managing the calendar. So I would get a schedule for a call with the CEO, but then nobody would show up. So so I can understand like family and you having the right person in the right seat.
Exactly. Mhm.
Awesome. So before you enter any partnership, what tells you someone shares your vision versus simply sharing your excitement?
Oh my gosh, love this. So here's the thing about vision. Vision, in my opinion, is not singular. The way that you see your company today is not well, it should not be where your company is going to be 5 years from now. So when I'm looking for a partner, and looking at I'm looking for somebody to complement me, not a clone of me, but someone is like the yin to my yang and someone who has strengths that I don't have. Because if we're both great and we speak fluid Spanish, but we're going to France, maybe I need somebody who speaks French. So I'm looking for someone who is not my clone, but someone who's a yin to my yang, and someone who morally shares some of my views and values, because so much of how you treat people and how you operate in the world and your worldview informs on how you're going to be as a partner.
Yeah, and just being aligned in values, and looking for alignment versus that partnership is really good because, like you said, you can't go to France and expect somebody speaking Spanish to understand them, you know?
Yeah. And I can and one example too, there's this one guy who is a very that I know that is a very successful business person. And he was like, I will never do business with someone that I know cheats on their spouse. Because if they would cheat on the person that they sleep beside every night, what would they do to me in business? So when you talk about being aligned, like we don't have to be perfectly aligned, but your morals and the way that you operate have to be consistent with how I want to run the company and how I see my life and how I operate with my family.
Yeah, and I think it even goes a little bit deeper than just, like, cheating on their partner. It's just their values, their morals. It goes a lot deeper, who are you as a person if you're not able to be faithful to your spouse, you know? So, what are some conversations should entrepreneurs have before signing an agreement that most people avoid because they're uncomfortable?
Okay. And now I'm going to take you from personal experience, and I've incorporated this into my practice. The very first business that I had, successful business, but we did it on a handshake. Me and this guy that I met at a leadership program, he had certain strengths, I had certain strengths, so we formed a marketing company. It was going well. And one day his wife walked in and said, "Hey, I'm your new business partner." And I'm like, "Lady, I don't know you and I don't think I like you," you know, but we did it on a handshake. Well, at this point, we have contracts, we have employees. And so that was kind of ugly to unravel. So now, one of the conversations that is uncomfortable that I have with business owners is about spousal consent agreements, prenups, and postnups. Because here's the thing, if you have a partner and something happens to the business, or you become incapacitated, or you die, or vice versa, what happens to your interest in the company? It doesn't just dissolve based on your estate plan. There's something that happens with it. Well, I may not want to be in business with your family. So I have that type of conversation. Is your spouse willing to sign a spousal consent to waive her right for management, not for ownership, but for management, and also to give the other partner the, first right of refusal to buy out your shares in the event that you're unable to perform? Because we built the company, and I don't necessarily wanna be in business with your in-laws.
That's deep because I never even thought that far ahead either, I a spousal agreement and a prenuptial agreement, didn't think about that.
Well, and even a post-nup. You can do a post-nup.
Hmm, that's nice. A lot of people are gonna get off this podcast thinking, "Wow, she a
Okay.
postnup? She taking it serious."
So let me share this with some of your listeners, and I apologize, I'm a little hoarse today,
No
but
worries.
maybe so you don't go home and get divorced, don't go home and say, "Babe, I want a post-nup." One way to approach it is like, "Hey, honey, we haven't done our estate plan." An estate plan could be the equivalent to a post-nup because what you're doing, you are contractually putting things in place for how you want your assets to pass during death or disability. So it's an agreement after marriage, which is almost like a post-nup. But you see how sweet that is? Like, "Oh, I just care so much about you that I want to make sure that you're taken care of if something happens to me." Yeah, that's also a post-nup.
So make it more friendly and engaging versus the hard conversation that we think it has to be.
And really, I would not get all out of sorts if my husband came home and said, "Babe, I want to post up." Because it's just like insurance. You don't need it until you need it.
Uh-huh.
And so it should be mutually beneficial. As long as it's mutually beneficial, those are the types of conversations I think that every partner needs to have. Whether you are legally married, you have a domestic partnership, maybe you just, are in a community property state. Um, but if you are sharing assets with another person, that's a conversation you need to have.
Yeah, I saw something online that said, if my children are getting married, their significant other would have to sign a prenup because I'm not losing everything that I work hard for because you decide to marry somebody that didn't really wanna be there or because they see all that you have. And that was an interesting thought process for me because, it's right, she worked hard, she worked on building the family well, why would she not protect it at this point? So,
So, Samuel, you know what? Can I share something with you that's going to blow your mind?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Now, I can appreciate the thought. Even if her child did not get a post-nup, you know what the parent can do? The parent can set up an irrevocable trust and have provisions in there that all the assets stay in the trust in perpetuity so that it never vests in any person's name. So her daughter can marry whoever she wants to marry. The trustee will govern who gets what. So it never becomes marital property. Because think about this. Even with insurance, I tell people do not give your kids a huge lump sum in insurance. Pay it into your trust and then, give them money over time. So once you give them, your house, your car, and they're married, it may become part of their marital estate. Okay, things don't work out. They want to get a divorce. Well, yes, half of what you worked for can be part of the marital dissolution agreement. But if it's in a trust, who owns it? The trust owns it. So the husband can't get it. Or if you got, a son, the wife can't get it, but they can still have the use and benefit of it.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't thought about that either.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, tell your babies go marry whoever you want to marry, and you can still use mama's cottage. You can come stay at the family home. You can use the boat. I'm going to make sure that the grandbabies got something, but it will never be in your name.
Man, Sheree came to give us all the backdoor tips about estate and trust, man.
When you told me to be inspired, I came to inspire today. Okay, okay,
I
okay.
love it. I love it, man. What are some assumptions have you seen destroyed otherwise great partnerships?
When you assume like for bookkeeping, for instance, that everything is being done in a tidy manner. Now, I'm a classic type A personality. I have to know things and see things. And you have some people that are type B personalities, and the way that you manage is different. So when you assume that maybe the books are in a certain order, that there are certain operating procedures and things that are going on in the business, trust but verify. Because, part of what I do is I help entrepreneurs build a moat around their assets by merging their estate plan with their business plan. So, another assumption is that your partner may have an estate plan. You guys may have sat down and done all these great things to build a business, but if he does not have his estate in order, what happens to his percentage of the business if he dies or becomes incapacitated? Are you going to be in probate court for the next 10 years trying to protect your business? And what you don't want to happen is you do not want your loyal employees to feel like they may not have a job. You may not be able to make payroll. You don't want your company to be vulnerable so that another company could come in and take it over or buy you out or put you out of business because of the uncertainty with your partner's estate.
Okay. What would you say somebody's watching and they starting out, they want to protect themselves beginning? What would you tell them?
Begin with the end in mind. The great Stephen Covey laid it out expertly. So let's start personally, okay? If you know that you would like to have a family, like, say you're a single person and at some point you want a husband or a wife and you want children, what does that look like? What level of support do you want during your lifetime? What type of legacy do you want to leave? And then just kind of reverse engineer that. But you start with, I have a four-part framework where first, you decide if you want a will-centered estate plan or a trust-centered estate plan. And so that is the foundation for everything you do. That protects your family. Next thing, you decide if you have a business that's based on services or products, because that's going to make a difference as well in terms of liability and things like that. Then, if you have, is the business going to be e commerce? Is it a virtual business or do you have a brick and mortar? Because once you start looking at those different options, there are several things to insulate your business and to protect it. And so, one of the last decisions you make before you run out and get an LLC or form a corporation is, are you going to be public facing, which means that people will know that you're associated with the business? Like, for instance, everything the Kardashians do, they put their name on it and it just goes crazy, okay? But
Yeah.
you may be a private person. Samuel, you may be a billionaire, but you don't want people to know that you're rich. So if anonymity is your thing, you want to, set up the company possibly in Wyoming, Nevada, or Delaware, places where the disclosure requirements for ownership are a little bit different. And only then, when you've gone through those 4 steps, um, you start making decisions about your structure. So that's what I would do first because that sets the foundation personally and professionally, and you can start building on those 4 steps.
Okay. So you talked a lot about trust, and I know when it comes to those things, like there's a lot of confusion whether like I should get a irrevocable trust or revocable trust. So what do you recommend starting out for somebody that's new?
So I'm going to give you the classic attorney answer. It depends. Um, I'm so, no, it really depends because I have some people, they come to me, oh, I want to get this kind of trust. And when I start talking to them, I'm like, you don't need a trust. Like you have a single home and that's really all you have. So don't pay me thousands of dollars for a trust. What you need is like maybe a life estate deed or a transfer on death deed. And then all your accounts, you can do payable on death. So when you pass away, they automatically go to someone. Um, in Mississippi, they have it to where even now for your vehicles that you can do, transfer on death. And so literally all that stuff you do for free. And the deed itself may cost less than $500 to draft and record versus thousands of dollars for a trust. And so people sometimes think they need more than what they need. It just really depends on what your goals are.
All right. So just depend on what your goals are. You could choose either one, irrevocable, or maybe just transfer on debt. Could be something simple if you don't have a lot of assets.
Right. And here's the thing. A last will and testament, I think that went out with Moses. I don't like them. I do not advocate for them because if they're drafted poorly, they will not stand up in court. And why would you pay somebody to draft a document that your children are going to have to pay somebody to go to court, publish it on a public record, and let's hope that nobody's fussing about it and you're in court for years versus if you do the all the transfer on death stuff, all they got to do is have a homegoing ceremony, when mama goes to glory, or if you have a trust, depending on how that's set up, it's going to just, it's already in effect during your lifetime. Or depending on how you have it set up, it may bounce into effect when you pass, but there's nothing left to do. And you're not paying all these legal fees, which I love accepting legal fees. But, just I try to, if I can't help you, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah. So you sound like you are very on point with everything that you do with your business and with your client. Say someone's looking for an attorney and they're trying to find a great attorney. What should they look out for?
So if you are looking for an attorney, just keep in mind that attorneys are a lot like doctors. We have specialties. And depending on how clear you are in your goals, I would just advise you as a business owner, before you ever look for an attorney, be very clear on what your business needs. Because if you stump your toe, you're not going to a heart surgeon. You need to know what type of attorney. And some people think that just because you've been to law school that you're an expert in everything. And I will tell you right now, if you came to me with an employment matter, you would be messed up because I can't really help you. No, seriously. I have purposely taken years to hone my skills with estates and trusts and business matters. And so that's my jam. If that's the help you need, I can help you. So part of looking for the best attorney is being clear on what you need. Even if you don't have a business, I think everyone needs an attorney that they can call for the matters that they deal with their families. And it's not always bad stuff. Just because you have an attorney doesn't mean you're about to get locked up or anything like that. It just means that you have somebody that is specialized in the areas that you need for your family or your business.
Okay. All right. So this one's a little bit different, but how did your definition of the right partner change after getting burned?
Honestly, I think that I would have the risk that I took with that partnership was not a calculated risk. The guy that I was in business with, brilliant. Like, but I would have done more investigative stuff. And I was really young too. I was in my early 20s. And so some things I just didn't know to do. I didn't go to law school until I was 30. So this is like before I was Scherrie the attorney. I was just Scherrie, the 20 something, ambitious, starting businesses and doing things. So as it relates to partnership, especially now, I would do a much deeper dive and just really look at morals. That's where I am. And just, what's your worldview? What are the things you're thinking? I mean, I can still be your partner if we have different political views, if we have different religions. That's not a deal breaker for me. But just that moral alignment, because when things really get hard with your business, this is the person who's going to be showing up for you. So are they able to show up for me, the business, and our employees in a way that's meaningful?
What are some deal breakers for you?
Deal breakers. I would say someone that does not document well. And I'll let you know. I have these things called Cherieisms, and all they are just things that I like. They're not hard and fast. They're just my little things that I like that I'm nitpicky about. But documentation, because I'm an attorney and I know the importance of it, someone who disregards the importance of documenting things properly, that is one of the first things that can tear your business apart. You could be doing great, but if you don't capture things in a way that the IRS can respect, that any other regulatory body can respect or requires, that is a deal breaker for me. Um, Someone who disrespects employees or talks to people who may not be at the same level as them. So I'm going to communicate with the janitor the same way that I communicate with the CEO. And I'm going to respect the janitor the same way I respect the CEO. So that is a deal breaker for me.
The top 2. How did you come up with the name Cherieisms for them? That was
That I've been using that for years, so I can't recall.
yeah, okay. I thought that was pretty cool because we always talk about different isms that go on, and the fact that you said that, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't thought about that."
Yeah. And I mean, I realize that about myself. Like, I am not a perfect person, and these may not make sense to other people, but I love them. And so, yeah,
Yeah, none of us is perfect. We just, going through life perfectly imperfect.
agreed.
Tell me about a time that money came attached to a price you didn't see coming.
Samuel. And you know what? Usually I will have covered this in the beginning, but my story, for those who do not know, I had a series of 3 failures that led me to law school. The first was like after the death of my mom at 16. My grandparents died a few years later without a will or a trust. Had a huge family fight. So that's how I really got started with estate planning. Um, yeah, and then secondly, we talked a little bit about the my first business that we did on a handshake. That was a failure. But the big thing, the final, the trifecta was in '08. The market crashed and I was a real estate broker and a mortgage broker and yeah, lost everything. And so that's what kind of got me on the journey. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not reinventing myself. And by this time, I had 2 little people. I had a 3.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, and the kids love to eat. Um, and so that's what started me on this journey.
So, with the family fights and the your personal family, how did you remend those relationships or rebuild those relationships? Because I know with family, being going through that is not an easy thing, grief and loss. So, how were you able to rebuild your relationships with your family, or are they still strained?
So interesting that you assume that I rebuilt those relationships because no, I'm serious. Some I did rebuild, and some I chose not to rebuild. Because somebody is blood, you just assume that those relationships that you carry over time. There were some very intentional things that happened in my family that people were kind of unrepentable for. And so it was one of those things where when you're building a moat around your business, you also have to build a moat around yourself. And so there are some that have intentionally been kind of left out there into the wind. And I'm okay with that because you just have to make a decision, in my opinion, that you protect your peace and your space. And so that's where some of those are. Are you surprised about that?
N no, 'cause, no, 'cause not every family has it all together, you know? You're gonna have the siblings that you talk to most, you're gonna have the siblings that you don't really talk to as much, but you still love them from a distance.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely love them from a distance, wish them no harm, but you cannot take everybody where you're going because some people fully intend to sabotage the trip and they don't want you to get there. It took Moses and them 40 years, but you got some people who never want you to arrive. And
Yeah,
so once you kind of identify that, it's like, I love you, but yeah, this is not going to
yeah.
work.
You're rowing and they're back there secretly drilling holes in the boat.
What is going on?
I know I've been rowing for so long, now we look like we sinking, where this hole come from? That's
No problem.
right. But what is one tip you can give to somebody that's starting their business that, are on their journey?
Play big faster. Like, don't wait until everything is perfect because you'll miss out. When I decided to go to law school at 30, the reason I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger was I was speaking to a friend and I was like, well, what do you think about this? And she was like, Cherie, whether you do it now or later, because I was concerned about my kids being so young. She said, whether you do it now or later, the time is still going to pass. So what are you doing while the time is passing? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. So play big faster, do it now, don't wait till later, but make calculated decisions about how you're moving forward.
I like that because I'm working on getting my LCSW, and, yeah, so I'm a year in, and a year went by so fast, it's been a year already. So, by this time next year, I will be licensed, and I'm looking forward to it, but time do go by fast, it does pass.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. So, what's one thing that you thought I would ask on here, but I didn't really ask?
About exits. And this is, yeah, because a lot of people have questions about exiting the business and, what that looks like.
So tell us, how would you exit? What would you look for?
So, if you're going to begin with the end in mind, you have to realize that an exit is not always about selling your business. Sometimes an exit is the dissolution of a partnership. It may be a bankruptcy reorganization or a bankruptcy dissolution. An exit of a business may be actually selling the business, retiring, or passing it to a new generation. So, when you are considering what your last day at work looks like, begin with the end in mind.
The end in mind. So, Cherie, thank you so much for coming on here, sharing your knowledge. How can people connect with you if they want to move forward and hire you for helping them business plan, create a trust, or anything like that?
The easiest way is to connect with me on LinkedIn, and, just direct message me, and I'd love to set something up or give you more information. I really do think that just like with raising kids, it takes a village, same thing with a business. And so there are resources that I have available that would love to share via LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you. And the last question I got for you, what is something that people always come up to you and ask about being an attorney?
About being an attorney, I get lots of questions about the type of law that I practice. And some of the things, and about like, is this legal? The strategies that I give people, like, is that legal? To look like you're judgment proof, which is basically equity stripping. And if I do this, am I going to get in trouble? Well, if you do it the right way, no, you won't get in trouble. But it takes also a team, and that's where documentation comes in. But that's like probably the biggest question that I get.
What is equity stripping?
Is
For
to make an asset look like it's judgment proof. So, say for instance, in your business, you normally have $100,000 just sitting in your account. Well, if I sued you, that is very attractive to me because you probably have insurance and you have this big pot of money out here that looks like, okay, I can get this $100,000 from Samuel. But with equity stripping, you apply different techniques so that if somebody tries to sue you, you look like you don't have any assets. And like, well, if I sued him, I'm not going to get anything. And so there are several different ways to do it. Like maybe with property, you take out a mortgage against it and then use a line of credit for your operations instead of just having the money sitting in the bank. And so there are lots of different ways, to do that. And also by separating your operating companies from your property holdings. You never want to have assets sitting in an operating company because if you're sued and it's just operations, maybe you use a management company to pay employees or to lease employees. There's nothing to get because the company doesn't have anything. There's a different company that's servicing it. So equity stripping is something that I love to do with clients and just show them the ethical way to do it.
Okay. So there's a there's a meme or a image going around online that, like you said, start in Nevada with your trust. Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, those are the top 3 places, and I think Wisconsin or something like that. Then they have like 2 different companies like managing, and so those are the things you recommend to help protect your wealth.
Yes, but sometimes we can overthink it. Remember, I said sometimes people come to me and like, Cherie, I want to get a trust. I'm like, you don't need no trust.
Yeah.
This is what you need. Like, you really, and then also, if you do not document properly, if you don't, keep your annual filings up and stuff, it can really come back to bite you. So, you want to make sure that before you do all these things, like you're at a stage in your business where you can maintain them and where it makes sense for you. But yes, normally I would start with the trust. It's like your umbrella, a holding company, a management company, and an operating company. So there's like a 4 entity plan that I generally start some companies off with depending on what stage they're at.
So, say somebody has like 5 real estate properties. What would you tell them about protecting their properties? They don't have no trust. They just came in and they have properties and all in their names. What would the first step you tell them?
Own nothing, control everything, okay? So nothing should be in your personal name. I don't know, and I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but this YouTuber, his wife just tried to divorce him, and he had like a $500,000 contract or something, and she thought she was going to get half of it because they were married. Well, the joke is on her. Now he put
Yeah.
everything in his dad's name, which I wouldn't have done that either. I would have put it in an entity or a trust. But I would tell the person with real estate, each property needs to be in its own LLC, okay, as a disregarded entity. And that entity needs to be owned by a holding company. Hopefully, the holding company is owned by a trust or some other type of entity, but you never want to commingle properties in an LLC. Some people are kind of lazy or cheap, like, well, I don't want to pay for the maintenance or the bookkeeping. But what happens if somebody gets a default judgment against you and you have 20 houses in one LLC and none of them have a lien against them? And so let's say it's $1 million worth of property. They can take everything in an LLC. So you see how dangerous that is versus paying a nominal fee to have different LLCs? It takes a little bit more time, but part of that, because we're talking about going from an operator mindset to an owner architect, you have to think, okay, documentation is going to take a little bit more effort, but you're not the person doing it. You have a team of people that help you keep this together. And it keeps your liabilities separated and it keeps a moat around your assets.
Yeah. And you referenced that example of moat often. So that's great that you mentioned that because we always got to protect ourselves, you know? Like you never know what's going on.
Well, and Samuel, I know we're trying to get off this podcast, but I got to do a shameless plug. I have a book coming out in
Okay.
October 2026, and it's called "Build the Moat First." And
Okay.
so it's not a legal guide; it's very common sense on things that you can do, like the things we're talking about here, to help protect your business and your life. And these are things you literally can put the book down and go online and do, or go to your tax assessor, your tax collector, things like that.
Okay. When you get the book, the link for the book, just share it with me and I'll have it linked on here as well. You're welcome. And the YouTuber you were talking about was Kevin Lee, the guy, you know the guy. He said nothing.
So right. When I saw that, I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, now she's paying him, I think, like, 500 million a year or something versus him, so that was interesting story, yeah.
Look, you're
But
gonna have to do some rip from the headline stuff.
yeah. Thank you, Sheree. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate you. If Sheree said anything that you like, go ahead and share it in the comments. Let's have a conversation. Like and share, and we'll see you on the next episode of Be Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve.